Derek raised his glass and I knew. "To Jake," he announced, grinning at our newest senior director who'd been here 8 months. "A true leader with executive presence." Everyone applauded. Then Derek's eyes found me. "And let's not forget our part-timer here who keeps the lights on." The room laughed. Part-timer. 6 years of 70-hour weeks reduced to a punchline. My phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting another work emergency. Instead, an email from my trust fund administrator. "Your trust has matured. $2.4 million is now available for withdrawal." Michael leaned over, read it, and whispered, "You know what this means, right?" I looked at Derek, still laughing, and thought about 6 years of stolen projects and being passed over. I smiled. It was time. Before I continue the story, please subscribe. I need to reach 1,000 subscribers so I can keep bringing you stories like this every day. It's just one click for you, but it means a lot to me. 6 years ago, I was 24 and stupidly optimistic. I'd just finished my MBA, had that fresh graduate shine, and genuinely believed that merit mattered. The marketing firm looked perfect on paper, growing, dynamic, full of opportunity. Derek was the VP of marketing then, and during my interview, he was everything you'd want in a boss. Charismatic, sharp, full of wisdom about building a career the right way. He told me, "Emma, you've got potential. Work hard, keep your head down, and you'll go far here. I reward loyalty." I believed every word. My grandfather had set up a trust fund for me when I was born, but it had conditions. I couldn't touch it until I turned 30. He wanted me to learn the value of work, to build something on my own first, to not become one of those trust fund kids who never had to try. Noble intentions. So I had this safety net I couldn't access for 6 years, which meant it wasn't really a safety net at all. I needed to make it on my own. I needed this job. I needed to prove myself, so I threw myself into the work completely. Nights, weekends, whatever it took, I was going to be the exception. I was going to be the one Derek promoted because I was just that good. I told my parents I'd found the perfect place to launch my career. My mom was so proud. Looking back, I can see exactly how Derek saw me. Young, hungry, grateful, and with just enough financial pressure to be exploitable. But back then, I just saw opportunity. Within 6 months, I'd become the person everyone came to when things went wrong. Project falling apart 2 days before the client presentation? Call Emma. Someone screwed up the analytics and the numbers don't make sense? Emma will fix it. Need someone to stay until midnight reformatting a deck because the associate who was supposed to do it went to happy hour? Emma's got it. I told myself this was good. I was becoming indispensable, building a reputation as reliable. What I was actually becoming was a doormat with excellent Excel skills. But the promotions kept going to other people. Brian, who spent more time on the golf course than at his desk, got promoted to senior analyst. He took Derek out for drinks twice a week, and somehow that mattered more than the fact that I'd saved his biggest campaign from complete disaster. Then there was Melissa, who had this talent for being in the right place at the right time, for making sure Derek saw her successes and never her failures. She got promoted too, and Chad, we'll get to Chad later, but trust me, Chad is his own special circle of hell. Every time someone else's name got announced at the all-hands meeting, I'd feel this little twist in my chest. But I'd push it down. I'd tell myself I was paying dues. That's what my parents always said, right? Nothing worth having comes easy. Hard work gets recognized eventually. Keep your nose to the grindstone. My dad had worked his way up from mail clerk to regional manager over 20 years. Slow, steady, loyal. That was the model I knew. So I kept my head down. I kept working harder, thinking that eventually Derek would notice. Eventually my turn would come. Eventually all those late nights and saved projects and fixed messes would add up to something. I actually believed that working harder was the solution. That if I just proved myself a little more, sacrificed a little more, carried a little more weight, then finally I'd get the recognition I deserved. It's almost cute how naive I was. Like watching someone slowly walk into quicksand while thinking they're on solid ground. 3 years in, Derek got promoted to Chief Marketing Officer. Want to know how? I wrote the presentation that got him the job. Every slide, every talking point, every impressive metric and strategic vision statement, that was me. I spent 3 weeks on it, working nights and weekends, making Derek look like a marketing genius who could lead the entire department into a new era. He practiced it in front of me 6 times. I gave him notes on his delivery, told him which board members to make eye contact with, coached him on the questions they'd ask, and he nailed it. He got the CMO role and a 30% raise. The day it was announced, he called me into his office. "Emma, I couldn't have done this without you," he said, all sincere and grateful. "I want you to know that. And when I officially start next month, the senior analyst position is yours. You've earned it." I actually teared up. Finally. 3 years of busting myself, and finally someone was seeing it, recognizing it, rewarding it. I called my parents that night. My mom cried. My dad said he was proud of me. I let myself imagine having a title that matched what I actually did, making enough money to finally afford a real apartment instead of my cramped studio. 2 weeks later, Derek hired Chad, his former fraternity brother from state. Chad had worked at 3 different companies in 4 years, and if you actually looked at his resume, it was clear he'd been pushed out of each one. But he had that loud confidence, that back-slapping bro energy that Derek loved. Chad was brought in as senior analyst, my position, and placed directly above me. When I asked Derek about his promise, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Emma, you're too valuable where you are. You're my secret weapon. Chad needs support getting up to speed, and you're the only one I trust to train him. This is actually a compliment." A compliment. My workload doubled overnight. I had to do my own job, which was already the work of 2 people, plus train Chad, fix his mistakes, and make him look competent in front of Derek. Chad would take 2-hour lunches and leave at 4. I'd stay until 9, cleaning up behind him. And Derek? Derek thought everything was perfect. His frat brother had a cushy job, and his secret weapon was too grateful and too scared to quit. I met Michael 4 years into the nightmare, though I didn't know it was a nightmare yet. I just thought I was tired. He was a software engineer at a tech startup, and we met at a mutual friend's birthday party. What struck me immediately was how relaxed he seemed. He left work at 6. He didn't check his email at the party. When someone asked him about a project, he said, "I'll think about that Monday," and then just didn't think about it. It was like watching someone speak a foreign language. Our first 2 dates were great. He was funny, kind, actually listened when I talked. On our third date, I had to cancel an hour before we were supposed to meet. "Fire at work," I texted him. "I'm so sorry, client emergency." He replied, "No worries." Rain check? But when we rescheduled and I apologized again, he asked, "How many fires can one company have?" I laughed it off. You know how it is. Marketing never sleeps. Except he didn't know how it was, because at his company, work actually respected boundaries. But he didn't push it. He kept noticing, though. On our 5th date, Derek called me during dinner. I took it. Michael watched me talk through a crisis Chad had sent the wrong deck to a client that I had to fix immediately. I spent 40 minutes in the restaurant bathroom on my laptop. When I came back, Michael just said, "Food's cold. I ordered you another entree." No judgment, but something in his eyes had shifted. We'd spend weekends together, and I'd work half of Saturday. We'd plan a trip, and I'd be on my laptop at the hotel. I'd come home at 10 p.m. on a Wednesday, exhausted and defeated, and Michael would heat up dinner without asking questions. But I could feel him watching me, this look on his face, like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't make sense. 6 months in, after I cancelled our weekend plans because Derek needed me to save a pitch that Chad had botched, Michael finally said it. "Emma, something is very, very wrong here." I told him he didn't understand, that this was just how competitive industries worked, that I was building something. He didn't argue. He just said, "Okay," and held me while I cried from exhaustion. But I knew he didn't believe me, and somewhere deep down, I was starting to wonder if I believed me either. The pattern became a cycle I could set my watch to. I'd do something major, Derek would take credit, I'd get a pat on the head. Repeat. Year 4, I led the campaign that landed Hawthorne Industries, a $2 million account, our biggest client at the time. I developed the entire strategy, pitched it to their CMO myself, built the team, executed flawlessly. 3 months of my life. Derek presented it to the board as his vision. I saw an opportunity, he told them, and I built a team to execute it. I wasn't even in the room. Year 5, I restructured the entire analytics department. The old system was hemorrhaging money, duplicate software licenses, inefficient workflows, people doing manually what could be automated. I spent 4 months analyzing everything, taught myself new systems, built training protocols, managed the transition. I saved the company $300,000 annually. Documented measurable savings. Derek got a $60,000 bonus for operational excellence. I got called into his office where he handed me a $25 Starbucks gift card and a glass trophy that said Team Player of the Quarter. He actually seemed proud of himself for remembering. "You're the backbone of this place, Emma," he said, like that was supposed to be enough. I still have that trophy. I think the candle I got my mom for Christmas cost more than it did. Michael started asking questions I couldn't answer. "Why are you okay with this?" he'd ask after I'd tell him about another project stolen, another credit denied. "I'm not okay with it," I'd say. "Then why do you stay?" And I'd scramble for answers, because I'd invested so much time, because quitting felt like admitting defeat, because Derek kept promising that my time was coming, because I was 28 and terrified that if I left, I'd have to start over and no one would value my experience here since I had no titles to show for it, because. But the truth was simpler and more pathetic. I stayed because I didn't think I had a choice. The trust fund wouldn't mature for another year, and I'd structured my entire life around the salary I was making. I felt trapped, and Derek knew it. He could feel it. That's why the gift cards and the hollow praise worked. Because what was I going to do? Leave? 8 months ago, Derek hired Jake, and that's when the situation went from insulting to absolutely farcical. Jake was 26, son of board member Richard Hartley, with an MBA from Harvard and the kind of confidence that comes from never experiencing real consequences. He was handsome in that generic catalog way, good hair, good teeth, good suit. In our first meeting, he told me he was excited to disrupt the marketing paradigm and asked if we'd considered leveraging blockchain for brand engagement. I wish I was making that up. He was also spectacularly, almost impressively, incompetent. He didn't understand basic marketing metrics. He'd never built a campaign. He thought SEO was a typo, but he had executive presence, which apparently means being tall and white and willing to use business jargon with complete confidence. Derek assigned me to mentor him, which we both knew meant I'd be doing Jake's job while he got the credit and the FaceTime. Jake took client meetings where he'd repeat things I'd told him that morning, slightly wrong. He went on golf trips and networking events. He left at 4 to hit the gym. Meanwhile, I was doing my work, his work, and fixing the small fires he'd start with his incompetence. One Tuesday, Jake sent a client deck with another client's confidential financial data in it. I caught it 10 minutes before the meeting. I rebuilt the entire presentation, talked him through it over the phone while he was in the Uber, and he presented it like nothing had happened. That night, I came home at 11 p.m. and just collapsed on the couch. Michael found me crying, not sad crying, but that exhausted, frustrated, soul-deep sobbing that happens when you can't hold it together anymore. He sat next to me, didn't try to fix it, just waited until I could breathe again. Then he said, very quietly, "Emma, something is very, very wrong here. Not with me, not with my work ethic, with the situation, with Derek, with the company, with what they were doing to me. It was the first time someone had named it clearly. I tried to defend it. Habit, I guess. But Michael just held my hand and said, 'You know I'm right.' And the worst part? I did know. I'd known for a while. I just didn't know what to do about it." 6 months ago, the senior director position opened up. Linda, who'd held it for 8 years, was retiring. This was it. This was the role I'd been working toward. I had been at the firm longer than anyone else in the department except Derek. I had the metrics: measurable wins, saved accounts, revenue generated. I had the expertise. I'd been doing director-level work for 3 years without the title or the pay. I applied with a 10-page proposal for the department's future. I outlined new strategies, identified growth opportunities, proposed structural changes that would increase efficiency by 20%. I spent 2 weeks on that document. It was good. It was really good. Derek scheduled my interview for a Monday. Then his assistant called that morning. Derek had a conflict. Could we push to Wednesday? Wednesday came. Another conflict. Could we do Friday? Friday. I sat outside his office in my interview suit for 40 minutes before his assistant told me Derek had been called into an emergency board meeting. We'd reschedule. I should have known then. 2 weeks of this. I'd prepare, get myself ready, and then conflict, emergency, something came up. The third time I sat waiting. Derek finally called me in, but it wasn't for an interview. "Emma," he said, not quite meeting my eyes, "I wanted to tell you personally before the announcement. We've filled the senior director position." My stomach dropped. "With who?" "Jake." He said it like it was obvious, like it made perfect sense. "He's got that executive presence, you know. The board was really impressed with him. Richard spoke very highly of his strategic thinking." Strategic thinking. Jake, who'd asked me last week what a KPI was. Jake, who I'd been carrying for 8 months. Jake, who'd been here less time than some of our interns. "I had an interview scheduled," I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. Derek waved his hand. "You understand, Emma. Jake's got that leadership quality. And honestly, you're so valuable in your current role. We need you where you are, keeping everything running smoothly. You're the engine of this department." Not the leader, the engine, the thing that works in the background while other people steer. "You understand?" he said again, smiling. And the terrible thing, part of me did understand. I understood exactly what I was to Derek. I just hadn't wanted to admit it until that moment. My 30th birthday was 2 weeks before the promotion party. Michael took me to my favorite restaurant, this little Italian place we'd gone to on our first date. He'd made a reservation, ordered a nice wine, and halfway through dinner, he asked me a simple question. "Emma, what do you want for the next decade of your life?" And I just broke. Right there in the restaurant, tears streaming down my face into my pasta. The waiter looked horrified, but I couldn't stop. I told Michael everything I'd been holding in, how I felt invisible at work, how I'd watch people I'd trained get promoted above me, how Derek dangled promises he never intended to keep, how I'd sacrificed my entire 20s, my health, my friendships, my peace, for a company that saw me as disposable, how I'd missed weddings and birthdays and trips because I was too valuable to leave. How I was so tired, bone-deep tired, but terrified to leave, because what if I had wasted 6 years for nothing? What if no other company valued my experience? What if I was the problem? Michael listened to all of it. He didn't try to fix it or offer solutions or tell me I was being dramatic. He just held my hand across the table and let me ugly cry my way through 29 years of being the good girl who worked hard and kept her head down. When I finally stopped, he said something I wasn't expecting. "Your trust fund matures in 2 weeks." I'd honestly almost forgotten. It had been this abstract thing for so long, 6 years away, and then 5 and then 4, that I'd stopped thinking about it as real. 2 weeks, Michael repeated. "That's $2.4 million, Emma. You have options. You've always had options. But now you have the resources to exercise them without fear." I started to protest. The trust fund was supposed to be for emergencies, for a house someday, for security. "This is an emergency," Michael said quietly. "Maybe not the kind your grandfather imagined, but watching someone systematically destroy your confidence and steal your work, that's an emergency. You don't have to stay anymore. You don't have to wait for Derek to finally see your value. You can choose yourself." It was the first time in 6 years anyone had told me I had a choice, and 2 weeks later, sitting at that promotion party, I'd realized he was right. The promotion party was Derek's idea, naturally. The invitation went out company-wide. A celebration of excellence. Join us in congratulating Jake Hartley on his promotion to senior director. It was being held at Marcello's, this upscale Italian restaurant downtown, where entrees started at $45. The company was footing the bill, which meant Derek could look generous without spending his own money. I almost didn't go. I spent an hour staring at my closet, trying to convince myself I had food poisoning or a migraine or literally any excuse to avoid watching Jake get celebrated for work he didn't do. Michael found me sitting on the bedroom floor in my underwear, paralyzed by the thought of having to smile and clap. "You should go," he said. "Why would I do that to myself?" I asked. He sat down next to me. "Because you should see this through. Trust me." I didn't understand what he meant then, that cryptic trust me energy that made no sense, but Michael had been right about everything else, so I listened. I put on my best dress, the navy one that actually fit properly, the one I'd bought for a conference 2 years ago and never had occasion to wear again. I did my makeup carefully, trying to look put together and professional, instead of like someone who'd cried herself to sleep the night before. I tried to manufacture some excitement for Jake. I gave myself a pep talk in the mirror. Be the bigger person. Show grace. This bitterness is poisoning you. Maybe if you're genuinely happy for him, Derek will see your maturity and finally respect you. Even as I thought it, I knew it was pathetic. But I was trying. I was really trying to be someone who could attend her own humiliation with dignity. Michael drove us there. He was quiet, which wasn't like him. He kept glancing at me with this look I couldn't read. When we pulled up to the restaurant, he squeezed my hand. "Remember," he said, "you have options now." I thought he meant I could leave early if it got too unbearable. I had no idea what was actually about to happen. We walked in, and there was Derek, holding court at the center of the room, Jake beside him grinning like he'd actually earned something. And my stomach churned with resentment, so strong I could taste it. Derek was in his element, standing at the center of the room with Jake beside him like a proud father at graduation. He was telling stories, loud, animated, completely fictional stories about discovering Jake's raw talent and taking a risk on potential. "You know, when I first met Jake," Derek said, gesturing with his whiskey, "I saw something special. That hunger, that drive, that innovative thinking. I told Richard, Jake's father, board member Richard Hartley, I said, give me 6 months with him and I'll develop a future CMO. 6 months. Jake had been here 8 months, and for 6 of them, I'd been doing his job. But sure, Derek had developed him. I stood in the corner with Michael, nursing a gin and tonic I wasn't drinking, watching this performance. Around the room were all the colleagues who'd benefited from my work over the years. Brian, who I'd saved from career suicide at least twice, was suddenly very interested in the appetizer table. Melissa was laughing at Derek's stories, not looking my way. And Chad, God, Chad was now a director. He'd gotten promoted last year. Chad, who still couldn't explain the difference between reach and impressions. Chad, who I'd been carrying since day one. He'd failed upward on my projects for 3 years, and now he made $40,000 more than me and had an office with a window. He caught my eye across the room and raised his glass with this smug little smile, like we were in on the same joke. We were not in on the same joke. Michael's hand was on the small of my back, steady and grounding. "Breathe," he whispered. I hadn't realized I'd stopped. Derek was still going, talking about Jake's strategic vision for the department, his fresh perspective, his executive instincts. Every word was a knife. Every compliment was for work I'd done, strategies I'd developed, instincts I'd taught Jake to fake. And everyone in this room knew it. They all knew, but no one was going to say anything because this was how it worked here. Keep your head down. Don't make waves. Sacrifice yourself at the altar of being a team player, and maybe someday you'd be the one getting the unearned promotion. I felt Michael tense beside me. "Almost time," he murmured. I didn't know what he meant. Then Derek raised his glass. Derek raised his glass higher, swaying slightly. He was drunk. Not falling down drunk, but that loose, loud drunk where filters disappear and truth comes out sideways. "To Jake," he announced, and the room raised their glasses. "A true leader with executive presence. Someone who understands what it takes to drive a department forward. His vision, his drive, his strategic leadership, this is exactly what we need at the senior level." Everyone applauded. Jake did this, humble but not really nod, accepting praise for work he'd never done. Then Derek's eyes swept the room and landed on me. I saw it happen. I saw the thought form behind his alcohol-glazed eyes, saw him think he was about to say something hilarious. "And let's not forget," he said, pointing at me with his glass, "our part-timer here who keeps the lights on." The room laughed. Not uncertain chuckles. Real laughter, like it was genuinely funny. Part-timer. I felt the word hit me like a physical thing. Part-timer. I'd worked more hours than anyone in this room. I'd worked more hours than Derek, than Jake, than Chad, than all of them combined. I'd been here 6 years, pulling 70-hour weeks, sacrificing my 20s, my health, my relationship, everything. And I was the part-timer, the person who keeps the lights on, not the leader, not the strategist, not the one with vision or drive, the part-timer, the background worker, the engine that runs quietly so other people can steer. I'd saved Derek's career multiple times. I'd written the presentation that made him CMO. I'd built half the systems this department relied on. I'd trained most of the people in this room, and I was the part-timer. Michael's hand tightened on my arm. I could feel him vibrating with anger beside me, but I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look at anyone. My face was burning. My throat was tight. And Derek was still chuckling, pleased with himself, not even aware that he'd just reduced 6 years of my life to a joke. That's when my phone buzzed. Michael's hand tightened on my arm, grounding me while the room's laughter echoed. My face was burning. I could feel every eye on me, some amused, some pitying, most just uncomfortable. Derek was still chuckling, taking another sip of whiskey, completely unaware that he'd just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Then my phone buzzed in my clutch. I almost ignored it. Probably another work email. Another fire for me to put out while everyone else enjoyed their drinks. But something made me check. Maybe just the need to look at anything other than Derek's smug face. The email notification lit up my screen. "Hartfield Trust Administration, your trust fund has matured." I opened it with shaking hands. "Dear Miss Emma Richardson, we are pleased to inform you that your trust fund has reached maturity as of today, your 30th birthday plus 14 days as stipulated in the trust documents. The full amount of $2.4 million is now available for immediate withdrawal or transfer. Please contact our office to discuss distribution options." I'd honestly forgotten it was today. 2 weeks and a day past my birthday. I'd been so consumed with the promotion disaster and this horrible party that I'd lost track of the date entirely. The safety net had appeared exactly when I needed it most. Michael read it over my shoulder. I felt him go still, and then he leaned in close, his lips nearly touching my ear. "You know what this means, right?" His voice was quiet, but intense. I looked back at Derek. He was still chuckling at his own joke, now telling some story about finding the right people for the right roles. Still completely unaware, still thinking I was trapped, still thinking I needed him. And something shifted. It wasn't a slow realization. It was instant, chemical, like a switch flipping in my brain. I didn't need him. I didn't need this job. I didn't need to stand here and smile through my own humiliation. I didn't need Derek's approval or his promises or his condescending praise. For 6 years, I'd been in a cage I didn't even realize I could open, and someone had just handed me the key. I excused myself to the bathroom. "Just need a minute," I told Michael, and he nodded, understanding in his eyes. I walked through the restaurant on legs that didn't feel quite steady. past tables of colleagues pretending they hadn't just laughed at me, past Derek still holding court, past the whole scene of my own humiliation. The bathroom was empty. I logged myself in and stood in front of the mirror, hands gripping the marble counter. I was shaking. But here's the thing, I wasn't shaking from humiliation anymore. That burning shame had transformed into something else entirely. Adrenaline. Pure, electric adrenaline coursing through my system. For 6 years, I had needed this job. Not wanted, needed. I'd needed the salary to pay rent, to pay off student loans, to survive in an expensive city. I'd needed Derek's approval because he controlled my career trajectory, my references, my future opportunities. I'd needed the promise of future recognition because I'd invested so much that walking away felt like admitting total defeat. Every decision I'd made, every boundary I'd let get crossed, every piece of myself I'd sacrificed, it was all based on need, on being trapped, on having no other choice, and in 60 seconds, that had evaporated. I had $2.4 million sitting in an account with my name on it. I didn't need Derek. I didn't need his approval, or his promises, or his scraps of validation. I didn't need to stay late, fixing other people's mistakes. I didn't need to train incompetent men and watch them get promoted above me. I didn't need any of it. I was free. Completely, utterly free. I looked at myself in the mirror, really looked, and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Not the exhausted, defeated woman who'd been slowly disappearing under the weight of other people's expectations. Someone else, someone who'd just been handed every card in the deck and was about to play them all at once. I smiled at my reflection. It wasn't a nice smile. I checked my makeup, straightened my dress, and walked back out to the party. Time to see this through. I returned to the party with a smile, not the tight, forced smile I'd been wearing all night. A real one. I felt light, almost giddy with the secret knowledge burning in my pocket. Michael caught my eye across the room, and I could see the question there. I nodded slightly. He grinned. First, I walked up to Jake. He was standing with a group of senior managers, looking slightly uncomfortable now that Derek had moved on to refill his drink. "Jake," I said warmly, extending my hand. "Congratulations. Really." He looked confused. We'd barely spoken since the promotion was announced, and when we had, I'd been coldly professional. Thanks, Emma," he said, shaking my hand awkwardly. "I know this must be... I'm looking forward to working with you." "I'm sure you'll do great things," I said, and I meant it. Not because I believed in him, but because whether he succeeded or failed was no longer my problem. I'd carry him exactly 0 more steps. He'd sink or swim on his own, and honestly, I hoped he'd figure it out. Just not on my time. I chatted with colleagues, actually relaxed and genuine for the first time in years. Melissa asked if I was okay, and I told her I was perfect. Brian tried to avoid me, and I cornered him to ask about his kids. Every interaction felt surreal, like I was playing a character who gave exactly 0 fucks, and it was the most honest I'd been in this entire building. Then Derek approached. He'd gotten another drink, and his smile was sloppy, apologetic, in that way drunk people get when they realize they might have gone too far. "Hey, Emma," he said, putting a hand on my shoulder. I didn't flinch. "Sorry about the part-timer joke. You know I'm kidding, right? You're the glue here. This place would fall apart without you." The glue, not the leader, not the director, the glue that holds other people's success together. "I know exactly what I am here, Derek," I said, smiling serenely. Something in my tone made him uncomfortable. His hand dropped from my shoulder. His smile faltered. "That's good," he said. "Good talk." He backed away, and I watched him go, still smiling. Derek's face went through several colors, red, then white, then a blotchy combination of both. "You can't quit right now," he said, and his voice had gone up half an octave. "We're in the middle of the Hawthorne campaign, the one we're leading." There it was, the slip, The admission that he knew exactly who was actually running that $2 million account. I nodded slowly, letting the silence stretch. Yes, the Hawthorne campaign, the one I created from scratch, pitched to their CMO myself, and have been executing for 3 months. The campaign Jake thinks is about brand disruption because that's the only phrase he remembers from the brief I wrote. Derek opened his mouth. I kept going. Jake doesn't know anything about it, Derek. He doesn't know the client's quarterly goals. He doesn't know the content calendar. He doesn't know which deliverables are due, when, or who the stakeholders are. He showed up to one meeting and said synergy 4 times. Patricia made a small noise that might have been a suppressed laugh. And neither do you, really, I continued, looking Derek directly in the eye. You know we have the account. You know it's worth $2 million annually. You know it makes you look good to the board. But if I walk out today, you couldn't tell the Hawthorne team what we're delivering next week if your job depended on it. Which, actually, it might. Derek stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Not Emma the engine. Not Emma the glue. Not Emma the part-timer who keeps the lights on. Emma who'd been running half his department while he took credit and hired incompetent men to positions above her. Emma who knew where everybody was buried because she'd buried most of them. Emma who could walk away and watch everything collapse. So, I guess you have a decision to make, I said pleasantly. HR looked at Derek. Derek looked at me with something that might have been fear. Good. They tried everything. Derek switched tactics like a desperate salesman, cycling through his greatest hits of manipulation. First came the charm. He leaned back, gave me that smile that had worked 6 years ago when I was 24, and eager to please. Emma, come on. You're family here. We've been through so much together. Don't throw that away over one bad joke. Family. I'd missed my best friend's wedding because Derek needed me to fix a deck on a Saturday. Family doesn't do that. They tried guilt next. Patricia jumped in, doing HR's special brand of concern trolling. What about the team, Emma? They depend on you. Chad, Brian, even Jake, they're going to struggle without your support. The team that had laughed when Derek called me a part-timer. The team that had watched me get passed over again and again and said nothing. The team that had benefited from my work while I stayed invisible. That team? They'll figure it out, I said. Then came desperation. Derek's voice cracked slightly. Just give us 2 weeks. 2 weeks to transition everything, to figure out coverage. You can't just leave us hanging like this. 2 weeks so he could scramble to document everything I knew, extract the final drops of value from me, and then reject my terms anyway. 2 weeks so he could find a way to make this my fault. I stood up. My terms or I walk. You have until end of business today. That's 5 p.m. I'll be at my desk. I picked up my folder and walked out, leaving them sitting there in stunned silence. My hands were shaking again, but this time it was pure adrenaline and something that felt dangerously close to joy. Michael was waiting in the parking lot. He'd taken the day off to be with me, sitting in his car, reading a book like my personal getaway driver. I slid into the passenger seat and he looked at me, careful and hopeful. "How do you feel?" he asked. I thought about it. About Derek's face, about walking out of that room on my own terms for the first time in 6 years, about knowing I meant every word I'd said. Powerful, I said, and I meant it. Derek called at 4:47 p.m., 13 minutes before my deadline. I was at my desk, mostly cleaned out, with my personal items in a box and my laptop already wiped. I'd meant what I said. I was ready to walk. When my phone rang and I saw his name, I let it ring twice before answering. "Emma Richardson," I said, professionally neutral. "Emma." His voice sounded strained. "We've reviewed your terms. The leadership team had an emergency meeting this afternoon and we're prepared to accept them. All of them." I almost laughed. Actually had to press my lips together to keep it in. I hadn't expected them to cave completely. I'd expected negotiation, pushback, maybe acceptance of 2 or 3 points. But all of them? What changed? I asked. There was a long pause. "Jake had a meeting with Hawthorne this morning. Without you, he It didn't go well. They've asked to speak with you directly before deciding whether to continue the contract. Of course he did. Of course. I'd told Jake that meeting was Wednesday. He'd apparently decided to impress everyone by going today instead, probably thinking he could wing it. And, Derek continued, his voice getting smaller, Brian and Melissa handed in their notice this morning. Over the weekend, they both decided to leave. They cited the company's toxic culture in their exit surveys. The house of cards was collapsing. Jake's incompetence was suddenly visible without me there to hide it. The team was abandoning ship. Derek was looking at losing his biggest client and half his department in the same week. And suddenly my terms didn't seem so unreasonable. I'll need that in writing, I said. By tomorrow morning, the full contract with all terms I specified, reviewed by legal, and ready for my signature. Of course, yes, absolutely. By 9 a.m., Derek, on my desk. If it's not there, my resignation stands and I'm gone. There was a pause. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. It'll be there. We hung up. I sat at my desk, staring at my phone, and let myself feel it. The complete, total, absolute reversal of power. It was intoxicating. 3 months later, I work from home 3 days a week. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I'm in the office. Mondays and Fridays, I work from my apartment in comfortable clothes with my coffee exactly how I like it. No fluorescent lights, no Derek hovering. I lead my projects with full credit. My name is on the presentations. Clients know who I am. When Hawthorne signed their contract renewal, they specifically requested that I remain their primary contact. It's in writing. Jake was quietly moved to a special projects role about 6 weeks after I came back. Special projects is corporate purgatory. You're still employed, still getting paid, but everyone knows you've been sidelined. He reports to Chad now, which is its own kind of irony. I heard he's looking for positions at other companies. I wish him luck. I really do. He was just a kid who got put in a position he wasn't ready for by a father who pulled strings. That's not really his fault. Derek treats me with careful respect now, bordering on fear. Actually, he asks permission before assigning me to anything. He CCs me on emails to the board about departmental wins. He approved my request for a new hire without question. We're not friends. We'll never be friends. But we have a functional professional relationship based on clear boundaries and documented expectations. It works. Emma doesn't gloat. I don't need to. The work speaks for itself. Michael asked me recently if I regretted not just quitting entirely, if I wished I'd walked away and started fresh somewhere else. No, I told him. I earned this position. I did the work. I built the client relationships. I created the systems. I just had to stop waiting for someone to give it to me and take it myself. The trust fund sits in investments, growing quietly. I haven't touched it. I don't need it now. My salary covers everything comfortably, and I'm finally building actual savings. But knowing it's there, that changed everything. It changed how I walk into meetings, how I respond to requests, how I value my own time. I'm not afraid anymore. I can't be leveraged. I can't be trapped. And that freedom, that knowledge that I could walk away tomorrow if I wanted to, that's worth more than the money itself. So here's my question for you. Did I go too far or not far enough?